Next item on the agenda is Bill 108, agenda item number 107, and this measure proposes to protect the environment by reducing litter and the improper disposal of waste and refuse in the city, and Oahu's contributions to marine debris by adopting a comprehensive program to systematically and measurably reduce litter through prevention, enhanced enforcement, cleanup, and public awareness. And I believe with us this afternoon we have Department of Environmental Services Director Kahikina, Deputy Director Halton, and let's see, Chief Resilience Officer Stanbro, standing by.
Yes, thank you very much. For the record, Lori Kahikina, Director of Environmental Services, and to my right, Deputy Director Tim Halton. For ENV, I have quite an extensive amount of comments. I'm wondering if maybe I can say them verbally, but maybe it might be more appropriate to write it to you.
Oh, okay. Do you have it in written form that you can turn in as testimony?
Just my very small handwriting. So I'll say it. I mean,
if you can submit formal testimony after the hearing, we would be fine.
So one of my first comments is right there in the beginning of that section where it's describing not the containers. So in section 9.1, you mentioned different departments in there, DPR, ENV. This entire program doesn't necessarily fall under ENV's purview. You're speaking about marine litter control at parks, beaches, sidewalks. That really does not fall under ENV. We are residential MSW collectors of trash, and so that's basically what most of my comments is going to fall under. And like I said, I can put it in writing.
Okay.
Is there more that you wanted to add, Tim?
No, it is just trying to get at the issue as we know is difficult, and trying to figure out who's responsible for litter. I mean, we do bulky items, or we do covered as things we collect versus, or we provide ways to collect MSW, but have not been in the enforcement business for litter or necessarily in the education business for litter and such. The question becomes, where does that go?
I know some of the background on this sort of revolved around Bills 71 and Bill 73, and I think the whole notion of Bill 71 was to ban the use of polystyrene, and many of the arguments being used to justify banning polystyrene had to do with really marine litter, and so when we solicited data from Department of Parks and Recreation, State Department of Transportation, State Department of Health, some of the nonprofits, many of the city agencies, what we found was that there was no real consistent manner of collection and reporting. So we said, okay, let's focus on the disposal side, and your department at least has many different facilities that you currently both manage and interact with on the recycling, composting, and other end. So that's sort of how the shift from Bill 73 has turned into Bill 108. We thought that we would ask ENV to take the lead, because you really have the biggest purview, and individual Parks Department or DTS or even Department of Facility Maintenance have slightly different objectives. Now, this may not be the final form, of this bill, but we thought it was useful to focus on one thing that both the food manufacturers, the industry distributors, and retail merchants, etc., and the Environmental Coalition agreed upon was they viewed the enforcement piece as being critical. So we said, okay, let us try to put together something, that can at least try to focus on marine litter. And, look at it from a holistic standpoint and then engage everyone in the discussion. So that's sort of the background.
Right. So the group that was putting together this bill, they were working with us hand in hand, and it made it extremely clear to them: do not dump additional programs on ENV, which is this exactly is doing. So if given a choice between those other bills of banning polystyrene and this, I would much rather go with polystyrene, banning that, because that doesn't dump a huge program on ENV to implement and enforce. And like I said, marine environment, that has absolutely nothing to do with what ENV does. We go to people's home to collect trash from trash receptacles. That's the extent. So if we're causing the littering from our trash receptacles or at our convenience centers, that definitely falls under us. But please don't put a whole nother program on us to monitor the beaches and the parks.
I guess one of the things that people have brought to our attention is that when other groups go out and do cleanups, you know, on the beaches or at parks, etc., they have told us that the cleanup items generally go to your transfer stations. So that's sort of the nexus. We're not looking to make you go out and do any pickups or cleanups. It was more the nexus between, you know, where the material that is being disposed of ends up when individual groups go out and do whatever they do. And
definitely is
in our discussions with many of the individual providers. One thing that most of the groups and even the industry people said was, there is really no common form of data collection. And individual groups, you know, Parks has a lot of groups that go out and pick up trash and litter. They don't keep any kind of statistics. Individual groups don't keep any kind of statistics. However, Department of Environmental Services at some point in this process does keep track of what is coming through and does keep track of the weight and volume of some of what is received. So that's kind of where we
can definitely help. And you know what? There's a new task force. I'm calling it a task force. Very informal. That Jim Howell's going to slap me for saying this, but he unofficially has been put in charge of beach cleanups, and it started with that group 808, and even Josh has been involved with that, and we are it can be viewed as being a stumbling block for that group, because what's happening is they do an incredible task, but they do it so quickly by social media that they post something this morning, within hours there's a crew out there at the beach, and then that we don't have a process in place at ENV to we can waive the tipping fees, but we need to know what the trucks are, you know, what the license plates are, when they're coming in. So we need at least 24 hours notice. So we're trying to work with 808 to work out some kind of program that we can, you know, get a little bit more high tech, so that we don't need, you know, to be the old age, hey, turn in your paper application and we'll approve it. The other thing is, yes, those beach cleanups, they want to go to our convenience centers instead of having to go to the transfer stations or H-Power and the landfill. Not landfill, I'm sorry, H-Power, but our permits is a problem, and that's the stumbling block for us. So, and Jim Howe is actually reaching out to companies like Matson, who they'll provide the container, and then even something like that, and they'll give $1,000, I think, to these different groups, and we can waive that tipping fee for those groups. So he's setting up a meeting with people like that we can be part of the solution. Right now, we seem to be a stumbling block, specifically for the 808, how they do things. But the other groups, they can give us the 24-hour notice, and we waive their tipping fees. So that is definitely under us, and we definitely want to be part of that.
So that is sort of the, you know, the genesis and the nexus. The goal is really to identify, you know, the best means of coming up with resolution of those stumbling blocks, as well as looking for new ways to be able to identify, okay, if we could measure and quantify, you know, the amounts that we're actually receiving or generating, or, you know, that we have, then we can determine our recycling, you know, more recycling centers, more composting facilities, or additional types of programs going to help us. But without that level of data compilation and standardization, it's too fragmented, and
Yeah.
because you have H Power,
Yes.
you are the logical choice
Yes.
to
We
be
want
at
it.
the heart of.
We want it. So more, and we don't take we don't identify what the trash type is, just the tonnage is. But I mean, if that's something we can look into,
We may know
We-
the source if it's somebody like 808 that we gave a waiver to, but much of this stuff, as you mentioned, will be, say, put in the bins or put at the park, and the parks folks will then dispose of it. It just shows up as part of parks refuse, if you will. It's not defined as marine debris versus anything else, but rather just the max are just it's coming in from parks, and parks pays for it.
right? But maybe as those groups, they're collecting it. Maybe can you give me? It's 20% fishing nets. It's 30% polystyrene or plastics. Maybe they can just kind of give us a rough when they're turning in their receipts to us, something like that. I don't know, but we can definitely work with you too. Now that I understand what you're trying to accomplish, can we work with
really
you
to quantify,
Okay.
you know, what we're dealing with, because the beach cleanups are one set of sources. What is generated on Oahu is another set of sources.
Yes.
And if, you know, like I know Councilmember Kobayashi had a food waste bill, you know, some time back, and one of the exciting things that we thought was, you know, potentially of great interest was when we took and I guess we visited one of the composting
Yes.
facilities. You know, it was so impressive to see the final product that we said, wow, if we could have this type of material be made available that could also ultimately be used by some of Hawaii's agricultural producers, you know, you kind of close the loop, and there's a lot more that could be done
Sure.
that
Sure, yeah. Yes,
we
yes.
don't think we're really doing enough of at this
Okay.
point. So because the department is going through the update to the integrated solid
Yes.
waste plan, we thought this is sort of the ideal time for the council
Perfect.
to sort of encourage and promote and really push for an evaluation of, you know, what we are dealing with,
Okay.
so we can expand the number of alternatives that would
Okay.
otherwise be available. And that's really where we are headed.
Great. Can we have maybe offline meeting with you then? Now that I didn't understand that, because that's not how I read the bill. I interpreted, oh my God, now I'm going to have to send staff out to enforce marine.
Oh no, I think
Vision
the
cleanup.
Office of Climate Change and
And then I'll
Sustainability
have-
will help you.
Okay, and then I'll definitely have my staff come with me, because they sit on the, you know, they're running that ISMWP, and so just to make sure that what we are discussing gets captured in that committee too, so that we're all on the same page. So
Yeah, it's a chance to look at it over the next few months to come and try and integrate the whole, not just.
Yeah.
Members, any further questions for the director and deputy director? No. Okay, thank you very
thank
much.
you.
Is anyone else here who would like to comment on Bill 108? Okay, I believe we do have a list of testifiers who have signed up previously. First would be Hawaii Food Industry Association. Okay, if not, let's see. They have submitted written testimony. And from KYD Inc., Kevin Wong. Mr. Wong?
Hi, good afternoon. Kevin Wong, Chief Sales Officer. Thank you. I'll make this short. Good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair and members of the PWIS. Kevin Wong, Chief Sales Officer of KYD Incorporated. We stand on our testimony and support of this bill. Done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any questions for Mr. Wong? Okay, thank you. See, is there anyone else who would like to comment on this measure? Okay, if not, members, we are in discussion. Since I did not have a chance to talk directly with the Department of Environmental Services representatives prior to this time, the chair is going to recommend that we defer action on this measure to more actively explore, you know, some of the ideas that were incorporated in Bill 108, since the goal was really to go broader than what Department of Parks takes care of and Department of Transportation Services, etc. And so if there are no objections, let me see. The chair would like to recommend that Bill 108 be deferred to the next meeting of the committee. Okay, thank you.